morning. It is Monday morning, the 21st day of November. My sister-in-law Carrie's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Carrie Jenson. And it's also Thanksgiving week. Lots of emotions going on. And welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monday. Mental Health Monday, if you are a first-time listener or viewer, is all about you and designed to speak to you about ways to make sure that we are focused on our mental health here during a crazy time of year. I am joined once again by my good friend, Pathways to Healing owner, Kristen Boice. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jenson. It's nice to be here today. I'm really excited about our topic.
I am too. It's a very topical topic, if that's even a proper sentence there. But this week is the week of Thanksgiving. We have so much to be thankful for, but we're not naive enough to think that with that thankfulness comes just some family stress or just tough times. And, I just was thinking, Kristen, I'm not sure how you feel about it, but the holidays are supposed to be a joyful time, but oftentimes are not a joyful time for a lot of people. And I struggle through them a little bit. There's just a lot of chaos and my kids love it, but there's just a lot of chaos with it. So we're going to talk a lot about how to manage that, how to get through our holidays together. There may be some dread involved in Thanksgiving. You might see that relative you haven't seen in several years, or get stuck talking to Aunt Sally who drives you crazy. I don't have an Aunt Sally, by the way, totally made up. So we're gonna address all those topics this morning. So I'm excited to have all of you join us with that. But before we even get started on that topic, we always do some square breathing exercise. Before I even do that, I've got to tell you, this weekend, Kristen Boice, I was at my in-laws' house. We had Thanksgiving yesterday in Ohio, some Thanksgiving fettuccine. It was delicious. And my son, Hank, my third child, was kind of out of control at Grandma and Grandpa's house, per usual, very excited. And I was talking to him about, hey, we need to calm down for a second here. And I look at him and he's like, okay, Dad. And he's going, I didn't even talk about breathing or tell him to do that. He just naturally started doing it. 5-year-old Hank Jenson. I was just so, never underestimate what your kids are watching you do. So I thought you'd be proud of that.
Way to go, Dad. That's the whole point.
So Hank was working on getting himself regulated. I was super excited about that. But you can get us regulated with some square breathing.
Okay, this is something I encourage you to do all this week and through the rest of the holiday season, because we know that the holidays bring about a lot of anxiety and stress. So we're going to start with our feet on the floor to ground into the present moment. Inhale through our nose for 4, hold for 4, and then slowly release out your mouth like you're cooling a cookie, is what I tell the kids, or cooling soup, to really slow down so we're accessing that parasympathetic nervous system. This is scientific, it works. When you do it regularly, you have to practice it, because we want to cue the brain when we are activated, when we are triggered, when we are overwhelmed, to know the cue to the brain is breathe. So we're going to do it together, 2 breaths, feet on the floor, big deep inhale through your nose. And release. You'll see I'm taking my time on that exhale. Mayor Jenson, I could see you kind of stretching it out, getting the tension out of your shoulders. We carry so much right here. And the breath, when we focus on that release of the breath, it helps release tension and tightness in the body. Let's do one more breath together. Feet on the floor. And exhale. You can just feel the difference already with 2 breaths. So 5 to 6 in a row every hour. And when you're with the relatives, when you're feeling overwhelmed, go back to the breath. If someone says something activating, polarizing, go back to your breath first and foremost, so we can access that prefrontal cortex and say something like, I know this is a heated topic for both of us. Let's talk about this another time.
Well, and I love it because, again, your lungs are always with you. So you can always utilize this throughout the holiday season or throughout the entire year. And again, it's a great trick that I use all the time. I use it in the car. I use it in my office. I use it in the middle of meetings sometimes, even when people can't tell when I'm stressed out. It's a great way. And I think one of the keys that I always think about is completely emptying that breath to let everything get out of my body. So we can get focused in on the matter at hand. So I'm a huge fan of the breath. I always equate it to like our kids are thumb suckers. The nice things about thumb suckers is your thumb is never gone versus a pacifier. So I don't know. I have these weird things that I think about like in equation to the breath, but your lungs are always with you. So they'll never leave you. So
and thumb sucking is, self-soothing.
Yep.
It's calm that get from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, to use scientific terms, in the nervous system. So that's one way. You're right. The lungs are always with you. The breath is always with you.
Yep, exactly right.
Feel like you're going to have a panic attack, I tell people just do exhales.
Yeah.
Just exhale, 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 exhale. Instead of trying to get that full breath, once you get that feeling of I can handle it, then you can try taking the deep breaths if you're having a lot of panic.
Yep. Love that. And again, so we're gonna dive into this conversation. Panic attacks are frequent all the time, but certainly during the holidays as well. So we're gonna dive into this entire conversation. Just a word of note: if you have a question throughout this conversation or want to just chime in and say hi, happy to have you do that. Use the chat there. If Kristen and I can't get you an answer right away live on air, we'll certainly go and seek out some answers for you later. But we're gonna kind of break this into 3 segments here around the holidays, Kristen. We're going to talk about holiday triggers. We're going to talk about setting boundaries and then kind of surviving the holidays, kind of a catch-all there at the very end. So really kind of too with surviving the holidays is kind of a last bit of it. But triggers I think are really, really important because again, I think there's been a lot of topic and a lot of conversation around triggers. And so I think maybe kind of can you start talking a little bit about what even a trigger is and then more specifically around the holidays, what a trigger might look like.
So triggers live within you. They live within your nervous system. They live within your body. So a trigger is an activation in your nervous system that feels a level of intensity. So for example, a trigger for me might be when my child is not being polite, so to speak, or using their manners. And so a trigger might be, and it's not them triggering me, it's my expectation, which are resentments waiting to happen, that I have I own my trigger. So it's not something makes you or someone makes you feel that way. It's already inside you. It's already there for a reason. So, and it may be something that is related to your past that needs to be processed or dealt with. So for example, my trigger around manners, that goes deep. That's like, am I good enough as a mother? That have I taught them to be, humility? Have I taught them gratitude? Have I taught them to be polite? And really what my main thing is that I want to teach my children is to, 1, tend to themselves and be who they are and give them full permission to be their authentic selves. And once they can do that, then that gratitude kind of flows out and they can see other people and acknowledge other people and how they feel because they're doing that for themselves. So, but I have to manage what I want and not project onto my kids because triggers are really a lot of times connected to either something from the past or their expectations. So for example, like, do you have expectations at the holidays that it's going to be all joy and all these wonderful memories?
Of course.
And oftentimes, right?
Yeah, that's the holidays for you, right? It's a Hallmark movie everywhere you go.
Yes. And it's not real because chances are it doesn't go like the Hallmark movie, or maybe you have some grief that you're dealing with this holiday season that you haven't before, or maybe there's this feeling of dread and overwhelm. It's okay. I think we set this up like we have to be a certain way. And when we're not, we're in shame or guilt, like something's wrong with me, or I feel bad that I don't want to go. And sometimes what I want to tell people is what is going to be most healing for you is giving yourself the permission slip to set a boundary for yourself. So what does that look like? It might look like, thank you so much for the invite. Could we do the holiday on a different weekend? Because I just want to stay home on the actual day of the holiday I'm just feeling overwhelmed and stressed. It might look like, hey, could everybody pitch in and bring a dish? It may look like having a plan. I always have clients map out plans. So, for example, if they feel activated by a certain person and they know that the person's going to want to talk about, let's say, politics, or so, because that's the hot button right now,
Mhm.
having a plan, an exit plan. So, it might look like, hey, I really love you and I care about you. And this topic seems to really get us in a bad spot. Let's not talk about that right now. And let's put a pin in that for later. Or you might say something like, hey, I don't really want to talk about that right now. Head to the bathroom. You might even think about a timeline of leaving early. So it might look like you and your family has a plan on what time you're going to leave instead of feeling trapped, instead of feeling like, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You tell them ahead of time, hey, we can stay for 2 hours and then we got to head out. And we're so excited to see you. That's it. So you already had the plan ahead of time and you've communicated it ahead of time. So everybody's on the same page. Have plans. Have
Mhm.
a backup person if you need to get out of a conversation that kind of sees, hey, I'm going to come in and you say, hey, if I get a conversation with, you know, Uncle so and so, can you help kind of come in so I'm not alone in that conversation? Something like that. If you're having a grief burst, it's okay to let everybody know ahead of time. I may or may not be able to come, depending on how I'm feeling that day. I may or may not be, have moments of tears or a shutdown when I'm at our Thanksgiving dinner. And I just need to tell you ahead of time. Or you may be in the moment, not able to do that. You can go to the restroom. You can say, hey guys, I thought I was going to be okay. I really think I need a break, or I'm really having a hard time. Or you might just say, hey, I really right now at this moment need to head out.
Mhm.
We don't teach people that it's okay to set boundaries and say how you're really doing. And I really want to give you all that permission today to do so.
You mentioned the term grief burst. I've not heard you say that before, so obviously kind of a new term. Want to kind of put a time out for a second and talk about what a grief burst. I mean, I have my idea of what a grief burst might look like, but why don't you walk us through what that means?
Yeah, and I love to use this term grief burst because anybody that's walked through grief is like, yes, that's how I feel. What a grief burst is if you're in the moment and you're thinking, I'm good, I'm fine, like I'm having a good time, and all of a sudden someone says something that, and it brings up a well of sadness, emotion. It could be anger. It's an intensity. It's like all of a sudden I was fine and now I'm feeling so sad. I'm missing that person. I am longing for that person. I'm wanting nostalgia. I'm wanting to see them again. Or it could be because you've had something, a job loss of some sort, or a divorce, or a breakup. There's some sort of a loss, and all of a sudden the emotion comes with an intensity. It's like a swoosh. Think of it like a wave. And then if you connect to the emotion, you allow it to come up and out, then it's like the grief burst is like a wave, and then it goes back down, and you're like, okay, it could last a little while. It could come and go. Just be able to notice it, be with it, and sometimes even name it. Hey, I'm having a grief burst right now. I didn't expect it. I just need a moment to kind of collect myself, be with my feelings, and this too shall pass. This is natural. This is normal given circumstances. So, grief burst, that language is so helpful to people because they're like, I was fine 2 seconds ago, and all of a sudden I'm not. Even a thought could come up, a memory, an association with food, with smells, with a person, with just an experience you've had in the past, and now they're no longer there. And so you're feeling that angst, you're feeling that sadness. So I'm glad you pointed that out, since we haven't shared that, what a grief burst is, because you will have lots of those during the holiday season.
Yeah, and I think again, kind of viewing your emotions as a wave and knowing that it's not going to be just a plateaued, I'm good to go type situation. So I think kind of defining what that grief burst looks like before moving forward. So I want to go back to kind of triggers. I want to talk about that a little bit more, kind of specifically. If you kind of identify your triggers or know what might trigger you, are there ways? You talk about triggers are usually something from the past. Are there ways to rid yourself of those triggers? I just ask because I imagine there's some people like, oh, how do I get rid of this trigger?
Yes, because we don't like how it
No,
feels.
Right.
I mean, let's be real. I hate how
Right.
I feel when I'm triggered. I mean,
Sure.
really, I'm trying to be kind to myself and nurture myself. And at the same time, I don't want to feel like this. Here's the one thing I want to say: family dynamics will activate us in some way. We don't talk about this, but it's the reality. They often, not always, oftentimes that's the biggest trigger for people is being around family. Isn't that interesting? Like
Hmm.
we think it's supposed to be
Fascinating.
this kumbaya moment. We're all joy filled and we're all so happy with each other, but inside, that's not the reality of how it really looks. The truth is, we're activated a lot by what people say, how they treat us, the patterns that are there. Can we get rid of triggers? We're always going to have some sort of an activation of some kind. It can be healed depending on how self-aware you are about the trigger, how motivated you are to work through it. And triggers live in the body. It's important for us to know. It lives in the nervous system. So my stomach might get a little knotty. I might have shortness of breath if someone says something. And I'm like, listen, I might get clenched jaw. My
Hmm.
face might get tight. I might feel tight in my body. I might feel a flush of just emotions come through. And how we tend to triggers is we breathe, we nurture, we notice, we ground ourselves. So I don't continue family patterns that I want to break. So I'm not as dysregulated or reactive based on what has been said or done or a look someone gave us or a tone of voice. I'm managing my tone of voice so I can make sure I stay regulated, centered, and I cannot say something I'm going to regret or behave in a way that I'm not going to regret. So, alcohol, we got to watch the alcohol intake.
Hmm. Hmm.
A lot of times there's a lot of flow of alcohol in family systems, not to make it wrong or bad. I just want everybody to notice how that will activate your trigger and our response system. So it's this is Dan Siegel, Dr. Dan Siegel's brain model. If I'm drinking, chances are my lid is going to flip quicker. This is what dysregulation looks like. I'm like, ooh, I'm activated, I'm reactive, I'm saying things, I don't have a filter because I've now taken that prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of the brain. This is the frontal lobe right here, which is the executive function, the reasoning, the rational. I can gain perspective. I can regulate myself. If I am drinking, a lot of times that's going to take that offline, and I'm not going to be functioning from that prefrontal cortex, that brain center. And you'll see that in family systems. You'll see a lot of patterns happen. And we think, well, I just like to pair the turkey with the wine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that as long as we know where the line is drawn and takes us off that offline.
And
So
I was going to comment about that too, because I imagine that also may be an embedded coping mechanism for stress around the holidays. Want to talk about that?
yes, good point.
Yes.
Very good point. Because we
Not
want to
only do
take
we love the turkey and the wine, but also makes the holidays that much more bearable. But then we're actually more anxious afterwards because we said something that we regretted because it was stupid, and etc.
Here's an unpopular opinion of mine. I haven't seen good things come from a lot of good family dynamics come from alcohol.
Hmm.
Period. Point blank. It's just the truth. Because to your point, we're trying to take the edge off. We're trying to kind of numb out maybe some things we don't want to feel. We're not maybe even aware that we're doing that. It's just so automatic. Like this is what we do during the holidays. We drink, we play games, we numb with alcohol, yet we've never really named it, called it out, or noticed the impact it has in our ability to connect. So, alcohol, we think it's a connector, it really is a disconnector and a depressant. So, if you're already feeling lonely, isolated, and sad, alcohol is going to be a depressant in your nervous system. So, you're going to feel more depressed, even more isolated than you did. And when you can say, you know what, I'm not going to drink this holiday season. And this is the big thing, drinkers like to drink with other people. And so if you say ahead of time, hey, I'm not going to drink, I don't care for it. Or in the moment, if they say, hey, you want this, you say, no, thank you. You can bring non-alcoholic beverages to the meal. You can come with your own beverage to replace that. of any sort. So if let's say you wanted a soda instead, or you wanted coffee, or you wanted something different, bring your own drink if you feel like you might not be able to handle it, or if you really feel like the alcohol is too much of a hindrance, it's okay to say, I can't come. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm not going to be able to make it. If
Mhm.
that is going to impact, if you're in a treatment program or you're in sobriety, I recommend, this is something I've been working with a lot this holiday season. A lot of people are working on sobriety. And I say, if you have a child or a grandchild or anyone in the family system working on sobriety, no alcohol at the family function. None. Can't have it around. You've got to lock it up. No alcohol at the family function. Now, if someone's in sobriety for, let's say they've been sober years and years and years, and they're comfortable being around it, that's a different ball game. Someone in early sobriety, no alcohol at all at the family function.
Mhm. It certainly changes the dynamic there too. So I wanted to kind of talk about those coping mechanisms. I think a lot of people, whether it be alcohol or other things, utilize coping mechanisms, in particular this time of year, to help manage that. So one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about around the boundary situation is like interrelationship boundaries, where maybe you view a boundary differently than your wife may view, or spouse or partner or whoever that may be. When you have different boundaries or view it differently, how do you work on that communication between the two? Not speaking from experience, of course, but, we all do, right?
An example.
Right. And again, just kind of how you view it differently. Everyone has, differences amongst their partners or their spouses, and how you view those. So that just then adds another layer of disagreement or just seeing it differently. So you have to not only manage that boundary, but manage the perception of your partner's boundary, yada, yada, yada.
So important. So there's two facets to this. One, knowing what is your own boundary for yourself. So if it's different than your partner, like, why is that important to you? And to be able to articulate that. So for my mental health, let's say the boundary is, for my mental health, I really need to leave by 10 because I get overstimulated, I'm exhausted, and I'm not functioning my best past 10. I'm making this up, but it's a time. Like, I can only handle so much, maybe at somebody's house. This is a benign example. And the other person wants to stay longer. Here's the game plan. If you have a different boundary, you talk it through before. So that's the other thing. And you acknowledge each other's differences and understanding of why those differences are. The more insight you have into why you need the boundary, where is it coming from, and how is it beneficial to you, is so important in communicating that to the partner. And then the partner has more understanding of why that boundary is important. So, for example, to continue on with this last example, if you need to leave early and the partner wants to stay, we drive separate.
Mm-hmm.
So we drive separate. And you guys, you can stay, I'm going to go, and that's okay. And we don't make it a big deal. We say, oh, I got to go. I'm heading to bed. Night, night, lights out. You guys have a good time. We'll see you later.
Mm-hmm.
If that's possible, you can work on a compromise and stay open to the possibilities. And it's okay to have differences, because you're not going to see it the same, especially with your family and their family. You're going to have different rituals, different holiday traditions, different ways even different meal options, and that's okay. The other thing I want to point out is singles. The holidays can be very triggering for singles. They can feel isolated and alone, and we make a lot about romance around the holidays and having a partner, and also a support group. A single support group is really helpful, and talking about it with friends that are also single or that have a lot of empathy is important.
Yeah, those are all, like I said, I just think it's important to talk about, that it's okay to have different boundaries at the holidays. And just, I think from what you said, is kind of communicating those up front with each other, and knowing that my boundary is okay. Your boundary may be different, and that's all right that I have a different boundary. So just adds another layer. So as we wrap up this segment, kind of going into Thanksgiving week, we're 3 days away from Thanksgiving, kind of your top 5 SOS toolkits, if you will, to kind of survive this holiday. What would Kristen Boice's top 5 look like?
Top 5. Number 1, I feel like I got to go quick. Okay, number 1 is watch your expectations. Mm-hmm. Because if you think it's going to be a Hallmark movie, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of disappointment. So there's a lot of disappointment that gets set up with expectations. So be realistic. Be realistic. Number 2, it's okay to have your boundaries for yourself. What do those look like? Where do they come from? Communicate your boundaries. Number 3 is have some backup plans if you need to implement the boundaries. So it's okay to have a support system, have a backup wing person, and really know your limitations and what you can and can't handle. Number 4, it's okay if you have grief bursts, because those come and go in waves. And when you know what it is, you're able to offer yourself that empathy and compassion instead of shaming yourself for that. And then when we set our boundaries, instead of feeling really guilty, you can go, it's okay. My mental health is number 1. This is so important for people to realize. What is best for your mental health? We've never really talked about that around the holidays. And what's best for your mental health may be different than someone else's. And that's all right. Knowing what you need and being able to articulate that and give it to yourself, that's called self-care, and that's important for your emotional stability and well-being. And number 5 is, if you've processed emotions, you've named those emotions, you've been with those emotions, gratitude will come. What are you grateful for? We push gratitude first, which is great. I love gratitude. I'm a gratitude practice in my journal and say it out loud. When you go around as a family, what are you hoping for as it relates to connection? So maybe we focus on being specific when we say, I love to do this as a family, and I'm the choosy one in the family. Let's go around and say what we're grateful for. And I try to make it about connection, authenticity, and of course, health and those kinds of things. But be specific when you're being grateful to somebody. Tell them specifically what you love about them. It will change your physiology. Gratitude is proven to change your physiology. It's not toxic positivity. It's a very big difference. Toxic positivity is like, just be happy and thankful for everything. And someone going through depression, anxiety, trauma, that does not work. That is a detriment to their mental and emotional well-being. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being able to have your emotions and practice gratitude at the same time. And I just want to say, you matter, you're important, you're loved, and you're enough, because the shame gremlins come out during the holidays and tell us we're not, because we have to have these wonderful memories for our children. And there has to be happy memories, and has to be, people care about how they feel when they're around you. That's the key. What energy are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing chaotic energy? Then you got to take care of that. You got to nurture that. You got to process and attune to that. Are you bringing a connectable energy to the holiday season? Are you connectable? If you're not, okay, say, hey guys, I'm not in a space. I'm not my best self right now. I'm really struggling. Own it. Share it. Be responsible for the energy you're bringing, because we want to create presence and help one another feel loved and enough, and they matter. That's the most important piece.
I think, at the end of the day, knowing that your mental health is the most important thing this holiday season. Your kids will enjoy Thanksgiving. Your kids will love Christmas. But focusing on yourself to make sure you are there to be the best person is a great, great key and something to think about this week as we head towards Thanksgiving. So Kristen Boice, I hope you know I'm thankful for you, and I'm thankful for all the people who watch this show. And I know I speak on behalf of the thousands of people every couple of weeks that tune in. They're so thankful that you give your time to help guide us in this conversation. So thank you on behalf of all of us for all that you do.
Thank you for offering this platform so we can share helpful mental health tips.
I love it.
So appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Well, everyone have a great Thanksgiving. We'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll start tackling some Christmas and other holiday topics here on Mental Health Monday. So thanks again, Kristen. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. 988 if you have.
988. That's right. Sorry, if you're in crisis, 988.
988. Text or call anytime this holiday season.
Yep. Thanks for adding that in. So, all right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right.